After the end of World War II, there was a severe political tension between two most powerful nations at the time, the USA and the USSR. From space race to meddling in third nations affairs, the time frame was such that one always competed against the other. Development of lethal weapons and strengthening the military was one such facet of the facetious contest. Almost every country in the world was allying to one of the nations. This envious contest, remarked as the Cold War, always kept the world on the verge of the Third World War. One such event occurred in 1983 when a nuclear war was just a few minutes away, which we will later explain in brief. It is exactly when the star of the show stepped in to prevent what would have been the most destructive war in mankind's history. You're watching Prop, and this is the story of the man who saved the world in 1983. A week after Hitler invaded Poland and Allies declared war against the Germans, on 7th of September 1939, Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov was born to a nurse and a Soviet Air Force pilot in Vladivostok, Russia. Growing up, he had been highly influenced by his father, who served the USSR during the World War II. He would follow a similar path to his father's and enrolled at the Kiev Higher Engineering Radio Technical College of the Soviet Air Forces. Shortly after graduation, he joined the Soviet Air Defense Forces in 1972. 11 years later, in 1983, he had ranked up to Lieutenant Colonel. He was on duty at the Serpukhov 15 bunker. It was the command center of Soviet early warning satellites. He was responsible for monitoring the sky and observing the satellite warning network to notify his superiors of any nuclear missiles sent off towards them. His supervisors would then follow any attack immediately with the counterattacks. Just like any other day, on 26th of September 1983, he was on his duty. It was half an hour past midnight, then, quote, "Suddenly the screen in front of me turned bright red. An alarm went off. It was piercing, loud enough to raise a dead man from his grave. The computer showed that the Americans had launched a nuclear strike against us. For 15 seconds, we were in a state of shock," said Petrov. The red sirens flashing and screeching loud warning alarms were enough to cause havoc inside the whole unit. Everything would make sense to their panic. The attack occurred at a time of severely strained relationship between the US and the Soviets. In September 1st, 1983, the Soviet Army had shot down Korean Airlines Flight 007, a South Korean passenger jet, after it had invaded the Soviet airspace. All 269 people aboard died. Among them was Laddie MacDonald, then US Congressman. This incident further escalated anti-Soviet sentiments in the United States and its allies. The enmity was on peak. The Soviets and Mr. Petrov had less than 15 minutes to decide the retaliation. Should Mr. Petrov pass the warning message to his command, it is no doubt his superiors all the way up to the then General Secretary Yuri Andropov, within minutes a massive nuclear counterattack would be launched. But something seemed fishy to Mr. Petrov, because the United States had just sent 5 missiles, despite owning over 1,000 ones. Later he recalled, quote, "I just couldn't believe the warning just like that. All of a sudden, someone would hurl 5 missiles at us. 5 missiles wouldn't wipe us out. The US had not 5, but 1,000 missiles in battle readiness. I imagined if I had assumed the responsibility for unleashing the Third World War, and I said, no, I wouldn't," unquote. He quickly deduced that the warning was just a bug in their own system. He explained to his unit and his commander, General Yuri Votinstev, that it was just a false alarm. After successfully consolidating them, he was still taking a big risk. He risked it all and waited for 15 minutes, perhaps the longest 15 minutes spent in his life. A quarter hour passed, but no missile was in sight. Nothing would rain on the Soviet land. His hunch was well vindicated. Later in 1998, his then commander, Yuri Votinstev, said, quote, "I noted Lieutenant Colonel Petrov's correct actions given the situation. Literally within a minute, he informed all the command posts that the information about the launch of space vehicles is false. His actions were duly noted," unquote. His quick decision-making ability was highly praised at the moment by his superiors. He was promised rewards by Soviet authority for preventing the war, but the Soviets didn't live up to their promise, as he would be picked on later. His story was suppressed because the authority considered themselves to be infallible, and admitting bugs would embarrass the highly influential Soviet scientists and officials. He underwent intense questioning after the incident and was reprimanded under the accusation that he had not filled accurate data of the incident under military diary. To which he replied, quote, "Because I had a phone in one hand and intercom in the other, and I don't have a third hand," unquote. He was then reassigned to a less sensitive unit. Following the suppression and harassment, he quickly left the military in 1984. Quote, "I was made the scapegoat. That was our system, the old Soviet system in the old Soviet army," unquote, said Mr. Petrov 15 years later in an interview with BBC. After the military work, he signed up to work for a company which primarily did research on early warning satellite systems. He would later leave this job to spend more time with his wife following the diagnosis of cancer. The Soviet Russia had classified this incident as confidential. Then how do we know about it? Well, the story appeared only after the breakup of Soviet Russia in 1991, when Moscow's classified data was leaked to the public. It was only then that he started getting media attention. In the early 2000s, he was rewarded with several awards along with cash prizes worth more than $75,000 in aggregate. He also appeared in a narrative feature and documentary film, The Man Who Saved the World, which was released in 2014. In one of his interviews, Petrov stated, quote, "All that happened didn't matter to me. It was my job. I was simply doing my job. And I was the right person at the right time. That's all. My late wife for 10 years knew nothing about it. So what did you do? She asked me. Nothing. I did nothing." Unquote. On 19th of May 2017, Colonel Petrov died due to hypostatic pneumonia at the age of 77 in Friazino, a Moscow suburb, where he lived alone on a pension. His death was not widely reported at the time and was only later confirmed by his son Dmitry. He is survived by his son Dmitry and daughter Yelena. In the time when the US-USSR relationship had been strained so bad, the Soviet system was hardwired to expect an attack from the US and retaliate. Had anyone else been filling Mr. Petrov's shoes on 26th of September 1983, the false alarm would have been retaliated, and who knows what could have happened next. Every one of us who lives especially in Russia, the US, or in Europe today may not have existed had this man not been in the right place at the right time. So in a way, we owe our lives to Lieutenant Colonel Stanislav Yevgrafovich Petrov. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell icon for more contents like this.